Hello, folks. You're listening to Race Matters. I'm the host here, Eddie Carson, and you're listening here at WJOP, Chopper Radio 96.3, Newburyport. You can find the show on YouTube, SoundCloud, on my website at professorcarson.com. And like every week, we lean into the soul, into the funk of thinking about the differences, the cultural nomenclatures that define who we are as human beings, regardless of what our skin looks like, our sexual orientation, our gender. But those things, like the title of the show states, those things do matter. I'm excited because we have a really great guest here, like we do every weekend. This sister is just super special. We have Reverend Rebecca Bryan here, and I'm just going to say a few things about her briefly and not to embarrass her or anything like that. But Reverend Rebecca, as she goes by as the minister, the spiritual leader at the First Religious Society, the Unitarian Universalist Church in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And she just has a litany of accomplishments. But one of the things to keep in mind about this awesome spiritual sister here is that she's been a leader at that church, I'm thinking since 2018.
Yes.
And she's sat on a multitude of committees, really kind of unite and pull community folks together and everything too. She has a book out, and I want to put a plug in. I haven't read it yet, but it is on the way. And I'm a ferocious reader, and I'm excited to delve into that work too. It is titled "Guided by Love: A Minister's Thoughts on Love, Hope, and Justice." What an outstanding title, my friends. And I encourage you to reach out to Reverend Rebecca, go buy it, have a conversation with this awesome sister here about what's taking place. Reverend Rebecca, welcome to the fold here at Race Matters. How you doing, my friend?
I am good, Eddie. It's so good to see you. It's really great. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I'm excited to have you on the show is for the fact that I know you as this amazing, wonderful spiritual leader, not just of your congregation, but really a broader community of folks who look to you in so many ways. But yet, one of the conversations I want to have with you, and this is something that I think about, and we've had this conversation in different spaces over lunch and everything, is I wrestle at times with my own sense of faith and spirituality, and I know I'm not alone. Can you help us understand your sojourn, your trajectory to being this person you are as a spiritual leader? How did you get to this place? I
Wow,
know
Eddie.
it's a
That's
big,
a
broad
big
question.
question. I guess I first of all, I would say life, my own life, by which I mean that, there was a lot of stuff that happened, some of which I share in my book, and I just always have been led by this force, by this light, by this love. And um, I learned that it's only through that kind of genuine connection that hey, it's either all of us or none of us, right? That's what it's about. And so I had a very much of a personal sojourn, a personal journey that led me to this point. I mean, I had a call to ministry when I was 25 years old, and I fought that until I was 43 years old and finally said yes and went to seminary. And I, I just believe so much in the values of community, of connection, of diversity in all of its ways. We're very pluralistic. We have atheists, humanists, Jewish people, Christians. I don't know. I add it all together. It's beautiful, and so that's been really an important part of how I've gotten here. But all the things that, I that have kind of saved me, I guess I would say, is what I build my life around,
Mhm.
interconnection, genuine community, nature, authenticity, telling your truth.
I think all those things are pertinent, particularly in terms of this day and age and the challenges that we're all navigating and wrestling through. You mentioned that you had this little bug that's called around 25, then you push back and you wrestle till you're about 43.
Yeah.
What Help us in a little bit if you don't mind about what was that wrestling match that put you on pause, and only share what you feel comfortable
Yeah.
sharing, my friend, and it may be in your book as well. So folks should go out and buy that if they want a little bit more deeper
Here it
detail.
is.
But there you go. Oh, hold it up one more time. I want people who are watching this to see that. Oh, I can't wait to get my hands on that copy. But I think that hearing this from a person who is such a spiritual force, such as yourself, is important for other folks who wrestle and navigate through their own sense of faith, spirituality, and that wrestling match in terms of where they're at.
Yes, absolutely. And if I can, if my experience can help one person say yes to their truth, then all is well. The wrestling match I had were in many ways direct results of things that had happened earlier in my life. So it was that sort of inner, like, who do you think you are? Like, what? Nobody wants to hear what you have nothing to say. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. It's expensive. This is really inconvenient, and on and on and on. You've got other responsibilities. How in the world are you going to afford that? And these were just internalized, honestly, sort of self-oppression, right? Of like, stay small, you be, in your place. And it didn't go away. And so if I offer, um, as Howard Thurman always said, right? Like, do what makes you come alive, because that's what the world needs. So say yes
Oh,
to that.
I love that. When we think about these wrestling matches and everything too, and I have to ask this because these elements are realities. Did gender play a role in your struggles in anywhere, in any capacity?
Absolutely, it did. Right? I mean, I'm going to be, I should be nice, but maybe not. But like, I want
You're
to
true.
know.
You're a truthful person. You're a blues sister. You're gonna go ahead and tell us.
Did it play into me saying, who do you think you are to myself? Absolutely, it did. Like, who do you think you are to have something to say? That's that is part of what I can only speak right from the feminine, deal with all the
Mm,
time. And I'm sure, my friend, right, you can speak to that too.
mhm.
And so, yes, it had a lot to do with that. And putting myself, sort of first for some time to make it happen, investing, time and resources. And so, yes, there is no question that wrestling match would have been quite different if I believe, if I were particularly a white male,
Oh, absolutely.
cisgender white male.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, here you are, you're at the forefront, you're at the front of the church, you are that leader as a cis woman, right?
Yep.
In those spaces, particularly in terms of the fact that we're in a world where people's own diverse sense of religiosity try to define scopes and roles for women and everything. But yet, it's interesting because, and again, I always tell folks if I say something wrong, please correct me here. Um, we know that you have the Universalists, the Unitarians, and
Hmm.
I would say this was roughly around what the 1840s when I believe that's right. I could be wrong when they merged to become the UU Church.
Oh,
One,
believe it or not, it was in the 1960s.
oh, I thought it was earlier than that. Okay,
Oh,
see, I told
yeah.
you.
That's
Oh, I'm
all
way
good.
off. Okay, I gotta go
Yes,
brush
yes.
up on my religious history.
No, you do not. That you know us is a good thing, Eddie.
So in the 1960s, then
Hmm.
this progressiveness within the church was a lot of this guided by the changes within American society towards the plight of women, black folks, and it continued. elements toward queer folks, or that had nothing to do with anything?
No, the first, as you said it. I mean, so we always say like our faith is a living tradition, meaning it is revelation's not sealed. It is constantly evolving and changing. And of course, we are in relationship with the world. And so absolutely, it has changed, evolved, and continues to be being formed by those things. Yes.
I mean, it's just interesting, right? Because I always think about time
Mhm.
and the fact that, these emergence, particularly in the 1960s,
Mm.
we know historically the significance of that time period, that particular periodization and everything too. But yet, you're the leader of a congregation that is pluralistic,
Yeah.
right? Very diverse. The fact that, I've spent time in your church and I have watched online your sermons, and you have, as you mentioned, Jewish folks, you have Christians, you have Buddhists, atheists, agnostics. Is there a challenge in really bringing a centrality of a message to folks who are so religiously and spiritually
Mm.
different each week?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of it, right, is that so we don't have a creed, we don't have any kind of dogma. We don't. It's not like you have to believe anything. In fact, one of our core values, we are centered around our commitments to these values, right? To the values of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to the values of the interconnectedness of the web of life, democracy, um, ending oppression. We just literally last year adopted an additional literal principle or value that states our commitment to doing our part to end racism and systems of oppression and racism. So those are what unite us. And one of the things we believe when it comes to belief is that there's no one right way.
Mm.
And
Okay.
everyone has their own privilege, responsibility, and journey on that. So we center ourselves around our commitments to peace, justice, love, where
I No, I appreciate that. And you may recall from some of our previous conversations. Now, I come from a tradition and a background that sees things in a different way. Me being once a former evangelical Christian, which I am no longer, and I had to abandon that, particularly for the reasons that you pointed out just now. I didn't find some of their doctrinal elements really align with my values. This idea that you can get up and you can give a sermon about love and justice, but yet you come up short when it's about interracialness, when it's about how do we love our queer folks, our undocumented folks. And
right.
in that part there made it very, very challenging for a soul brother such as myself, particularly someone from the deep South,
Mm,
where in many ways there's this inherent element that there is only one truth.
yeah. Talk about division, right? Talk about disconnection. One truth. I mean, unless that oneness is the incredible diversity that makes up reality, diversity of, right? Everything.
It is. And folks, if you're joining in, this is Race Matters. I'm Eddie Carson with Reverend Rebecca here at WJOP 96.3, Newburyport, Massachusetts. Reverend Rebecca, when we think about these elements, though, a lot of folks would say that one of the great contentions in society is centered around faith and spirituality
Mhm.
that divides us. And yet, everything I've heard you say, talk about our the pluralistic aspects, the beauty of our different truths and everything that's there. Have you ever had an experience where maybe you had someone who came to your congregation or someone who had a conversation with you in other spaces who stated, but there's only one truth, and I don't understand your church? They're like, Sister Reverend, I don't understand you. I don't understand how you can just accept all these things because we live in a world, right, where truth is attacked, and yet people challenge this idea here, my friend, that there is only one
Yes,
truth.
that's right.
Have you been in that situation? Have you had to wrestle with that?
Eddie, with my brother, with my biological brother, who is
Oh,
evangelical, born again Christian, and we could not be further apart in our theological beliefs and many of the political beliefs. And he's my brother.
got
I
got to love your brother.
I do, and and I'm not saying that to diminish what you're saying. It's um, let me put it this way, even to this day, I have to sort of prepare myself for his answering machine because I never know what's going to be like, picks it up and, whatever his name is, let's just say it's Sam. It's not, hi, you've reached Sam, the Lord has da 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 da. And I just have to like listen and then say, hi, Sam, just calling to say hi. But absolutely. And people say a lot. A common thing about our Unitarian Universalism is, oh, you all don't believe anything. I'm like, oh, actually, on the contrary. And they're like, no, no, you don't believe anything.
Don't
It's
believe.
hard for them to wrap their head around.
I mean, it's so I come from a church tradition, the Churches of Christ, and I will never forget when I was first introduced into the Churches of Christ. I thought it was a cult, right? So I come from my parents are not really what I would say church folks. They are what evangelicals would call unchurched folks,
Mhm.
is how they would describe it. But just the nature of being from Montgomery, Alabama, where I went to school, just different things. Next thing you know, I'm wrapped up in this, and they had all of these rules. Rules such as, well, one, a woman cannot teach men, nor be a leader within the church to other men.
Mm.
Not really space for queer folks
Mm.
at all, right? And if we kind of dig in a little bit more, here's some of the stuff that I love. The only way you can find spiritual peace within the evangelical Christian circles, of course, they would call that heaven. That is, you have to be baptized. And you got to be baptized within the churches of Christ.
Yeah,
Because if it's not there, you don't ascend. And my favorite one, I just got to share this here.
please.
Oh, you're going to love it. You're not allowed to mix bathe. So mixed bathing is the fact that in a binary sense, men and women cannot be in the same swimming pool because men will lust after women in that same way. And then the other one, of course, is that unless you're married, you shouldn't dance because it promotes lust
Wow.
in folks that's there. I'm not making this stuff up. Folks, you can go online and read about all this. And I remember like, um, I don't see that anywhere. And I'm sitting here and I've studied biblical Christianity and I've read this kind of stuff, you know. So that's the fold there. So you get that sense, particularly thinking about you as a female
Mm.
leader and probably having to challenge folks. You mentioned your brother. I think we said we'll call him Sam.
Yeah, Sam.
We'll
Sam, my
call him,
brother.
we'll call him your brother Sam, who just don't understand this. They don't understand all of these things that are
Yes.
there. They can't make sense. I need a truth.
Yes.
I need to get to point A to point B.
Right.
And they'll say, well, you're not giving me that truth. There are too many. I can't accept the fact that we live in a world of diverse people and diverse thoughts and diverse ideas because I've been raised to believe that there's only one way and one correct way and nothing else counts.
That's right. That's right. Right. And that it's a fluid, it's a creative universe. It's fluid. Even the whole, non-binary. I mean, it's just that they can't, it's like, no, right? Which is just tragic because that's reality,
Yes.
right? And so, yes. And yet, even within our own tradition, I mean, so our church is 300 years old this year, and I am the first female called minister.
So I read that and I knew that from our previous conversations. And I forgot to mention that at the beginning during our introduction that you are the very first one, especially the fact that you're in Newburyport, Massachusetts. It
Yeah.
has a long, long legacy of spiritual folks. I mean, going back to George Whitfield,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right? And other folks. Religiously speaking, I know George Whitfield wasn't part of the UU, but you get my point here and
Yeah.
everything too. Um, so why do you think that is? And I want to say this by saying
Mm.
that I believe sexism is ubiquitous. It exists. I am complicit in ways that I wrestle with all the time. And I ask to invite people to call me out on that so I can be a better human being and not to get you in trouble. But I imagine even within leadership, it is prevalent within the UU church.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. And sometimes more damaging than others.
Mm,
And, part of why it's really important that I use my title, Reverend, is that, and you and I've had this conversation, Eddie, but, as a woman of whatever you want to say, my stature, whatever I look, right? Like, I don't naturally command the respect
mm.
that a man who is whatever 6 feet tall can walk in a sports jacket and stand at that pulpit and people like listen.
I mean, you show up and folks are like, we're waiting for the Reverend to show
Yeah.
up. Check it out. You walk into a room as you beside another white man, and then they refer to the white man, Reverend, welcome. And you're sitting there because I suspect you have experienced that
Yes, I have.
before.
I I I, I was at a wedding and I will keep it a little cloaked in terms of, but I was at a wedding and I introduced myself to the father of the bride. And I told my name is Reverend Rebecca. And then he looked around and he said to his daughter, "That's the minister?" I'm like, "Hello, first of all, I'm right here." And yeah, it happens. It happens.
Oh, hey, at least they're having it in front of you so you can stand up versus to walk away and it's like, what qualifies that
Right.
soul, right? To be that leader. And I want to say, because I know a number of folks within your congregation, and oh, my friend, I mean, they love you. And I want to give a shout out because, I remember, I guess it was like a couple months ago, maybe not even quite a couple months ago, I challenged white folks in churches. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get in front of your congregation and I want you to pray for racial justice. I want you to pray for the justice of our LGBTQ folks, our undocumented friends, and the list went on. And you did exactly that. And it's one of those things where I turned to my wife and I said, I'm just going to put this out there because that's just what I do. I'm not a provocateur, but I want to challenge folks from time to time. And you did it. And here's the question. Why do you believe there's so many spaces, and not just within churches, but whether it's in businesses, organizations, even households,
Hmm.
where folks are afraid to just stand and talk about and do what is right? Why,
Hmm.
why do you think that is? Million
Wow.
dollar question. I get it. Not fair,
Yeah.
but
No,
it's my show and I can ask it.
it's a huge question. And the word that's coming to me, Eddie, is relationship,
Mm,
right? Like we aren't cut out to be alone. And I'm not talking about romantic. I mean, that's all beautiful too. I'm just saying we are creatures of relation. And we are, why could I do that day? First of all, I read that on Facebook and you're like, show me a church, a single, and I was like, we'll do it. And the next day I threw out what I was going to do and I took what you wrote and I had everybody stand up and they loved it. And I think I said, say amen or something. And they did.
that's exactly what you did.
Yeah. And one of them said to me at the end, that was amazing, except you missed one word he put on Facebook. You didn't say, I don't know. And I was like, I'm sorry. I wasn't like, but it's relationship. It's because you and I have a relationship.
We
And
do.
as I told you a long time ago, you challenged years ago, like, who's going to call me or pick up the phone in the middle of the night? And we were talking about allyship and commitment.
Yes.
And to this day, I will do that for you. And I know it's reciprocal. And so when you say that on Facebook, I do that. And
I
that's where the strength comes from.
I appreciate that, my friend, and that's why I'm one of, if not your biggest fans. That's among a lot of competing folks who want to be your biggest fan and everything too. As we delve into the continual challenges here in the 21st
Mm,
century, one of my favorite sayings is that most things, except for blues and jazz and good funk music, most things in the 20th century need to stay in the 20th century. But yet we've seen the evilness, the
mm,
pervasiveness, the hate, and all the things that marred the problems of the 20th century creep into the 21st century here.
yeah.
And yet we're in a place where your mission, your work is to bring about the sense of love and community and all of that. And I'm not an optimistic person,
Mm,
right? You have hope in the title of your book. I am a hopeful person. I will say that. I think that's that despair where I'm at.
mm.
Where, how are you feeling about our current status in terms of people just saying, you know what, let's put away this politics and all of these things. Let's break bread, let's love on each other. Let's make this happen. How do you do that when just that dawning weight has got to be on your shoulders every single day?
Well, first of all, we don't put away politics ever. It's so interconnected.
Thank you.
Everything we're talking about, right? I mean, we are imperfect and we can do a lot better. And we do what we can do to show up. And I preach it. And so that aside, or not aside, but in addition to that, you know, it, so for me, my spirituality and my work in justice is deeply interconnected. And I'll go back again to Howard Thurman. My spirituality opens my heart and my knowing of what's true, and then it calls me to act. And the way I don't become an angry, cynical person is to always return into my spiritual practices that help me remember the world is a beautiful place, and that I want to create more love and create more. I mean, everything we do affects the world. And I know people would argue that, but it certainly affects the person you're looking at or the person that you walk by. And I want to do all of that with as much love and light and joy, um, uh, remembering those things. So we bring that with us in our work, in our hard work when we show up. So,
I have a friend, I won't mention her name, but we both know her. She was recently ordained into the UU Church, and she is leading her own church in a great state of Maine. I think you may know who
beautiful.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about. And and I'm with her a good little bit,
yeah,
and we talk about this sense of connectedness,
yes.
and you described that sense of connectedness. And one of the conversations we most recently had is the fact that her congregation, they want to be that model, that beacon to the community about what love looks like.
Hmm.
And yet, she told me that there are folks within her church that because they want to love folks and show that, they don't always feel safe, not in the church, but safe from people outside
Hmm.
of the church looking at the congregation,
Hmm.
maybe disagreeing with their politics, their love, their vision. And I bring that up because, for many listeners of this, they'll know, right? Part of y'all love is y'all had this banner on the church that stated Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And someone came and tore it to pieces and tore it up out of a sense of hope. But I love that love, the way it was stitched back together, There's an annual celebration that's there and everything too. What do you tell the person though who's just trying to be better and trying to love better, but yet they're constantly inundated by the voices of hate, the viciousness of male supremacy, white supremacy,
Mm,
and we can go on male or straight supremacy.
right.
Like, how do we encourage folks to just hang in there? What's the purpose in putting yourself out there for that justice work?
Mm. You know, I guess I'd say, Eddie, first of all, what do I say? I mean, I would say to them, right, that we're all in this together. And if you need a break right now and you want me to just love you up, you want some warm soup, then then you do that, right? And you stay connected. I mean, the relationships in our congregation, it's a shared community of communities, right? We're not all the same.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that we all need times where we're tended and seen and loved and safe enough to cry or curse or get angry or whatever to get it out, to let it recycle, to let it sort of like come out and be made anew into, yeah. And sometimes I talk to people who are afraid, and we need to love and accept people where they are and find out what then can they be doing, because there's some realness to that, right? Like I am, whatever. I am this person. I'm a citizen of the United States. I was born here. I have brown skin, right? And it's clear that, I have, my mother is from India. I'm afraid to
Hmm.
go and to stand at that particular rally. And we say, then we'll stand there for you.
I love it. I,
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, it is, as you pointed out, and we talked about before, I always want to think about the folks who will show up and oftentimes, and I do, and I reflect on this all the time if I'm in a situation, and it may not even be a critical situation. It may be a situation where I mean it's like I need to call Reverend Rebecca because I just need to go cry. I need someone to
Yes.
walk down the beach and talk to me and say,
Yeah.
brother, it's gonna be okay. Like let me hold on you. Let just
Yes.
cry. Just be you. Be human. You don't have to
Yes.
be this
Be
this
you.
whoever you are. And
No.
that's
Right.
the kind of stuff, I always tell folks, I'm not always talking about, sure, you need to show up for folks when it comes to justice works, being on the streets, doing stuff. But I'm talking about folks that I can have an intimate relationship with because my soul, my heart is hurting because I exist in a world
Yeah.
where people don't want to see me, even the white folks who I think love me, only to find out I can't find them when I need their love. And that, my friend, is very real.
I'm sorry. And you deserve everything you asked for. We all do. We're all just doing the best we can as beautiful creatures that deserve exactly what you said. So anytime you're on the beach, Eddie, or you're sad, you call me up and right? And I know that's mutual. I know that.
It absolutely is. Now, I will say, um, the water up here is too cold, so I can't keep my feet in the water if we're on the beach. So I've tried that a number of times, and it just doesn't work for me. It's like the ocean up here has a AC and it never turns on. It doesn't get enough sun to warm things up and everything too. A question I want to ask you. I'll start by making a statement. So I am someone who studies a lot, particularly when it comes to 20th century American race and religion, much more biblical Christianity and from the evangelical lens than other things, just to be transparent.
Hmm.
So I'm not ubiquitous in my knowledge of all things Judaism, Islam, and all of that stuff, but I have a narrow lens. That being the case, I come from a tradition where Black folks have subscribed themselves to particular congregations and churches.
Mm.
And one of those that has not been inundated by Black folks is the UU Church at all. I was recently looking at some stats by Robert Jones, who studies this, and he really gets into really the white supremacy, racial culture among all American churches and
Yeah.
everything that's there. But one of the things it noted in terms of a statistical point of view is those numbers among folks who look like me are quite small. And even more to add on to this,
Hmm.
those who look like me in the front of those churches, much
Mm,
like even you to that point as a woman,
yes,
are
yes.
very, very, very small too. Why, why should folks who look like me go to your church? Go to the UU church. How is there a place for us that you would like to share that would make us feel safe and wanted in such a place?
So I hear two different questions and I want to answer them both.
Okay.
Why should you? I have no right to tell you to do anything. I'm not going to tell anybody they should do anything. So, first of all, that's a mindset that has to change if it's there.
Mm,
You know, these black people, they should be coming. These, or I hear it more like, these young parents or these youth, they should be. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not how we think about this. And and then the other question of how can you know you're safe or that there is a space here for you is that help here. It is about us creating a space together.
mhm,
So what I hope you would find always is an open door, metaphorically, an open door. And it doesn't always have to be on Sundays. However it is, we can connect and then help us become who we are together. I'm not saying this is who we are, and Eddie, you and your, whomever should all come here and now subscribe. Be that no, no, we're going to change because of that, and that's what we want. That's what I want. So
And I had to ask a question because I know the answer because I've always been welcomed, invited into such spaces. I've enjoyed it as I have a relationship with a number of your congregants, much like I have a relationship with you.
yes,
And those conversations to me, being proximate within those relationships,
yes,
are always important.
yes.
Always important.
A
So,
favorite preacher you are, Eddie. I don't know if you're going to say that, but you have stood at our pulpit a number of times and loved.
look, anytime, my friend, I'll fly back up from the deep south to come congregate and hang out with you folks. Anytime. You know, I I would be dismissed if I didn't ask this question, and that is, I want to talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
And, in thinking about, guided by love in this work. One that I haven't read yet, but I promise when I do, I'm gonna send you a note. Say, oh, my friend, it was wonderful. It will happen. Tell us a little bit about your work.
About the work in this book.
Yep, about your book.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is a book of 25 sermons, although some people are debating that. They're like, I've never read a sermon like that before. Like,
I bet
um,
sermons can be kind of a meditative aspect and process too.
well, yeah, or very challenging,
Right.
or a
Wonderful.
reflection, or they're really more like little essays, right, on topics or stories. Some are stories. But I had a member in the congregation, a woman, say to me, we need to get a book of your sermons published. And I said to her, I don't know, the last guy, seriously, who was here, he didn't do it until he was here 10 years. I'm only here like this is my seventh. And she's like, we need to get a book of your sermons published. So so it took a year and we did, and we got a publisher. And now though, these messages, this isn't even about me. This is what people need to read. They either need to recognize that like they're not alone in understanding the importance of love, of working for peace, of promoting diversity, and there are things in here about nature. There's things in here about justice, about being a human. Um, we need these voices like yours and many others in this public square. We need these to be a part of what's being talked about and heard. And so it's not drowned out by loud, hurtful voices that say otherwise.
Oh, I love that. I appreciate that. Do you find yourself at times picking it up and maybe dancing through to a particular essay in there and reading that and finding a sense of just being, renewed in a different sense? Or Or if you're like me, I pick up some of my stuff that I thought was just the most outstanding thing on the planet when it was first published. Then I kind of I sit down and I'm like, oh, I should have done this a little differently. I should have done that differently. I should have said this, that, that. What's your approach? I have
Well,
mine. I'm curious.
I I haven't read it because I wrote it. I lived with each of these messages. And so what I do is if someone talks to me about one, I'll read it again. And I have compassion for myself that, we're all a work in progress.
Mm,
And so who I was in 2019, sure, there's threads and core that, but, have I changed and evolved? Yes. So, yeah, I don't sit down and read this, to be honest. What I do is
good
I
for
dance when
you.
people want to talk about it together.
I love it. And I sit there and I imagine this is something, just a thought, it percolated on my mind that community folks are taking that and having their own spiritual devotions,
Right.
reading and talking about their own growth in their own sense. I imagine that's part of the purpose of writing.
Yes. Yes, that is. That is part of the purpose. Yes. And
Oh,
people will say, it's making me think about something different. Like there's a whole piece on process theology, right? And like, oh, you know, good. I'm not saying I know to tell you what to believe, but if
right.
we can,
Absolutely.
if people can absolutely, just like we all want to do, or yeah.
Oh, that is brilliant, my friend. So as we get to the end here, I have to ask you this question. Then I'm going to give you the final word because I always like to give folks the final word here too. And that is this. What are you most hopeful for? Not in the world,
Mm,
not in New England, not
mm,
in Massachusetts. I always like folks to bring it back to their own backyard. And I
mm.
think the power, if we just focus on our backyards
Yeah.
and then everyone does that, then we come together in different ways. What are you most hopeful for in terms of the community of Newburyport and
Mm.
maybe its own transformation that you would love to see happen? Maybe it's in a process, maybe it's aspirational.
Wow. Yeah, because we of course have our own including this church, right? We kicked out the minister Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who said that he would always preach about slavery from the pulpit until the day that it was no longer a reality. And he was kindly kicked out shortly after. So we're no like saints. And what came to me though, Eddie, when you asked that question, is to have an affordable community in home costs. Let's just start there, but all the rest of it, so that truly we can become a beloved, diverse community. And if that happened, I think a lot of the rest of it would like to come right after, right? So
I,
that would be my hope, is my hope.
I've brought that up in a lot of conversations. I know for a fact I won't say where you live. I just know you don't live there.
I don't live in Newburyport. No, I because there's no way.
And I know for a fact, right? Unless I win the lottery, and I can't win the lottery because I don't play the lotto ticket, and that's not the judge, folks. I don't play the lottery because I'd buy a ticket and win, and yet I'll lose the ticket and don't know I even won. I'll forget to check it. That's just me, and I know myself, so I'm not going to waste my dollar on how many of those tickets cost. But and those are conversations that I've had with a lot of other folks that, this is not a criticism of Newburyport, but it's something that folks know that it is, while it can be an inclusive community, it is exclusionary in so many ways where there are very, very few people who look like me living there. I mean, shoot, you don't even live there. And
That's
that
right.
becomes challenging. My favorite Newburyport story always is when I walk down the street, I go to a restaurant. We had a nice lunch one day too. I'm just surprised it didn't happen. People will come up to me and they'll pull up a chair just to have a conversation with me there. Like they're just welcome. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, do that, but that's challenging. Or people sometimes will stumble just to get a good look at me.
Oh my God.
And then that narrative goes on and on. My wife tells these stories way better than me because she sees those things,
Yes.
right? And I'm not paying attention to those things. And it's not, and I'm not saying this is done in a really kind of a really negative manner, like, oh my goodness, this or that. But it's one of those things that happens due to the pervasiveness by the lack of the sense of my own pigment being reflected in that space.
Yes. That's right. That's right. Yes. And kind of a novelty, right? Instead of
Novelty.
like, right? I go into Boston and I breathe better. I mean, no offense. I do. It's an involuntary, like, like, but I'll tell you, I think I've told you this. The reason that I chose here, they chose, it was a shared choice, right? That's what we do. But
Right.
um, in 2017, when I was in the search process, and so were they, and I was debating, and I had some concerns about what we're talking about. And Carlene Griffith Sekou, a Black leader, used to be in Boston, said to me, honey, that's where the work is.
Absolutely.
So
I love it.
there I went. And I don't regret, I love it here. But my point is, like, there's work to be done.
And y'all are doing great work. I'm a big fan of Newburyport, and I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate the things that are transpiring there as well. We have, Pride is coming up,
Yes, that's right.
right? And that's always a nice big celebration in Newburyport and everything too. I know
That's
like
what our Sunday is, Eddie.
this
We're
coming
having,
Sunday.
yeah, yeah. It's the Pride service, right, for Newburyport, the Sunday worship service. So we are having drag performed in the worship. Like, what else would you do?
Love it.
It's great. So
That
yes, an exciting weekend for the whole city and all
right.
kinds of parades, and it's
Absolutely.
beautiful. Yeah.
My friend, as we get to an end, what I like to do is I like to give my guest the last word. And that can be on anything, any thoughts, anything you want to share, anything that's percolating in your mind that may reach the soul of folks in different ways. You have the last word.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a couple. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I do hope folks get my book and share these messages, guided by love. And what I say at the end of every Sunday service, and what I say to all of us, is to go in peace and return again in great joy. So may we return again in great joy.
Reverend Rebecca Folks, thank you for listening to Race Matters.